stay tuned because we'll be talking to some kids who've been through their parents' divorce, and they're going to tell us what it was like for them. Next on Fathers Are Parents Too. Welcome to Fathers Are Parents Too. We have as our guests today Dr. Jeffrey Clark, who has specialized in what the effects of divorce on children are and how parents can help to minimize those effects. And we also have with us two adult children of divorce, and they're going to tell you what it was like for them as their parents divorced and trying to stay in touch with both parents now after that divorce. Welcome, everybody. We have Dr. Clark here, and you work at the Mid-Peninsula Family Services in Palo Alto, California. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we have Jessica, who is a freshman at San Jose State University. And we have Eric, who is a DJ for, now what do you DJ for?
Right now I'm technically DJing for Falco Fashion Park, the Icecapades.
The Icecapades?
Yeah.
Wow, well that sounds pretty interesting.
It's pretty cool.
So what I want to start out is by asking the two of you a couple of questions to sort of get the ball rolling. And to start with, I'm wondering, Eric, how old were you when your parents divorced?
I would say I was probably about 16, 17.
Okay, and you're how old now?
I'm 20 now.
So it's pretty recent in terms of the span of your life. It's been just a few years.
Yeah.
And Jessica,
yeah.
your parents are divorced?
Yeah, they got divorced when I was 2.
Okay, and you're how old now?
I'm 18.
So you were very young when it happened, and
Right.
yours, it was very recent. Gosh, what was that like for you? Did you think it was going to happen? To me, that seems kind of old for that to be happening to you.
Actually, yeah, I knew it was happening as it was going on.
And did they keep you involved in that? Did they talk openly to you?
No, it was my mom. I knew on my mom's part she wanted to have a divorce.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
But, yeah.
And then what about you? Well, obviously you were quite young. Were you aware of it happening? Do you remember?
I don't remember a thing.
So your parents have been divorced or divorcing for as long as you can remember?
As long as I can remember, yeah.
Did that seem just normal to you, or did it seem unusual for you to be in that position?
No, honestly, it's not unusual for me, just because it's something that's happened all my life. In fact, I think if I were to be in a setting where I had a mother and a father in the house, it'd be very unusual for me.
That's kind of a sad comment, isn't it? Dr. Clark, we have someone whose parents divorced when she was very young, and then someone who went through it quite recently, and I think the first instinct one might have is, well, he was older, so maybe it was easier on him, or my instinct was, wow, what a shock to the system. And then there's probably the train of thought that, well, if it's done so young, I mean, this young lady doesn't even remember her parents ever being together, and is that maybe a better way to do it? I remember when I was growing up, the thought was always, try and stay together for the kids, that's better. And
Right.
and what's the common conventional wisdom on that now?
I think part of the conventional wisdom now is this idea of staying together for the sake of children is kind of coming back, I think, into vogue in the media and in the culture to some extent, and they're talking about laws that sort of make people stay together longer or whatever.
And is it your experience, if you've had a chance to witness this, that it is better for the kids, even if there's, I mean, it used to be, well, you don't do it because it's better to have the kids not see parents fighting.
Right, right.
What's your experience with that?
I think that it's really hard for kids to live in a conflicted environment. But I think that most parents, when they're married and they're parents, they have children, I think they almost always try really hard to make it work out. And I think that if children can be raised by two happy parents, even parents that are living apart, that has some advantages over in quote intact family where there's a fair amount of conflict.
What about, Jessica, your parents were apart for pretty much your whole life. Did you ever wish they were together, and even though you knew that they might be in conflict? Because I think it's probably always the case that you know, the proverbial grass is greener. Was that your wish?
I think when I was younger, it was a wish of mine, just because I didn't think about the impact it'd have on my family. I just wanted, like all my other friends had, a mom and a dad in the same household rather than see my mom on the week and my dad on the weekends. But now that I'm older and I realize the situations, I'm happy the way it is because I know that had they stayed together, I wouldn't have been in a happy household.
And then what about for you? I mean, do you, I don't want to pry too much, but I would imagine that there was a point at which you were aware, as you said, your mom wanted a divorce, so you were in an intact household where it was sort of heading in that direction. What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, I always knew that there was, like, I mean, there was always tension in between, like, my parents and everything, but, like, it was, like I said, it was always, so for me, I was kind of used to it, but it's just when it happened, it was just like, I was happy for my mom because I knew that's what she wanted.
Was she happier then? And what about your dad? It sounds like, was he okay with that too, or?
Yeah, he was basically okay.
Then, do you still have contact with, you're both in college or of college age, do either of you still live with either of your parents, or?
Yeah, I still live with my mom and grandma and my 2 sisters.
And do you have contact with your father? Is he in the same region
Oh,
as you are?
Yeah, I just talked to him today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, okay. Did you tell him you were going to be here?
No, I didn't, actually.
And what about you? Do you still have, do you live at home, or?
No, I don't. I moved out at the beginning of my last semester, which would be the beginning of my freshman year.
Okay, and you lived with?
My mother.
And did you still have contact with your father?
Oh,
or?
yeah. My mother was always very good about letting me have contact with my father. In fact, my junior year, I went back and lived with him for the year.
Really? Now
Yeah.
back, that sounds like it was
Oh,
far
I'm sorry.
away.
In New York, Buffalo area.
So that must have been kind of interesting. You just switched homes then.
Yeah.
Well, what about if he was back in the East Coast and you're from California now? How was that, being so far away? I mean, Eric, do you see your dad still then?
Yeah.
It sounds like that might have been a little bit more tough for you. What was it like being, did you used to live back there and then you moved?
Yes, I lived in New York until I was about 10, and then I moved out here with my mother, and honestly, I have to say I'm a California girl at heart. So moving back to New York for me, I couldn't wait to get back to California.
What was it like, though, moving that far away from your father, at first at least? I imagine that was pretty tough.
Yeah, it was tough, honestly. I think the first 2 months there wasn't a night that went by that I didn't cry myself to sleep because I missed my dad. I mean, you know, you're a little girl and he's your daddy, and he still is my daddy, you know, even though I'm 18 years old. So it was very hard, and it still is to this day.
Wow. But you're in touch with him? it
Yes.
sounds like. Now, Dr. Clark, I know that's one of the things that happens a lot with parents divorcing, especially nowadays. There are these moves, and it sounds like both of these kids are fortunate that they have contact with both their parents, but I think a lot of times that's really not the case, and the parents, as they're getting very polarized, they may not realize that the kids still need that contact. What, can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we've gotten a little glimmer of at least young people's life related to the divorce, and I think one of the things is that, you know, you were asking me about divorce versus, you know, intact families and that kind of thing, and I think a lot of the biggest impact is determined by the relationships that are maintained or not maintained related to the divorce. And it's the relationships that are most significant. And in fact, do people maintain, you know, relationship with both parents? It's really important for children to know that both their parents love them and that they can, you know, have both parents in their life in some fashion.
What about cases where one of the parents may not want or may not recognize the need to encourage that relationship? Did either of you ever have a point where either of your parents would sort of maybe not be understanding of your need to be involved with the other parent as well, where they might maybe not even intentionally have, you know, made you feel like it wasn't okay to talk about how you felt about the other parent or to communicate with them? Has that ever, or tried to get you to take their side? I know that happens sometimes.
I had that a little bit with my father, but to be quite honest with you, that was mostly because of interference of his current wife.
So when you were there, it was more difficult to stay in touch with your mom, maybe, or were you able to?
Yeah, it was more difficult to stay in touch with my mother just because if I was on the phone with her or if I sent her a letter or received a letter from her, there was always some comment made. It was usually a really immature comment that was made, and luckily I was old enough at the time to realize, you know, just to not even regard it.
So how, I was going to say, how was that for you? But it sounds like it wasn't really a big consequence. I would imagine to hear one parent even if they don't put the other parent down, but just sort of like maybe they're a little jealous or insecure, and they're like, well, why do you have to contact that other parent? You just talked to them last week. What does that do to a kid?
I think it's, much bigger impact on younger children. And I really appreciated what your previous guest had said about that, is that, to say anything about a child's parent, especially a young child's parent, is perceived, I think, by most children as assault on their character. And even though it's one of the things that most parents know more about what not to do, I think most parents slip even when they know or even when they're trying not to. And so I think it's really important for parents to know and to work hard at not saying anything derogatory or negative about the other parent.
Well, I just wanted to reaffirm what he said, that is very true, because I did feel that when a comment was made about my mother by my father or my stepmother, that it was also a personal attack towards me, because I took it personally. I was very offended.
Without getting specific about what was said, can you sort of give me an example of the type of thing how it would affect you?
Well, for example, if they would say something about, they would make a comment like, oh, you do that just like your mother, or, oh, when you do that, you look just like your mother, or, something like that. Saying it as an insult, and obviously to me it's not an insult, but it was obvious to me that they were saying it as an insult, so I did take it. Oh yeah, it made me feel not only upset that they were talking about my mother, but I definitely took it personally, because obviously I am like my mother.
So like as if there was something wrong with you, or they thought there was something wrong with you. What about now, when you were in the house and your parents were still there, and it was you were obviously older, so you could understand what was happening, did you ever feel either like intentionally your parents maybe wanted you to take sides, or ever just feel like you should have taken a side even if they didn't ask you to, just because you could see what was going on, and you maybe felt that as a child you were supposed to support one of your parents or take their side? Did you ever feel in the middle like that?
For me, it was like, they never really tried to get me on their side, like my mom tried to get me on her side, don't you think I'm right, or anything like that. It was more, I usually tried to stay out of it just because I didn't really like the whole mom and dad situation. They were always fighting, and now that they're divorced, they're actually talking. It's totally different now. So, but when they were married, and I just tried to stay out of it, basically.
Do you feel it? Oh, I'm sorry. Go on. Do you feel like the way they are parents to you and interact with you has changed since since they're not around you fighting now and you're not having to be out of that? Do you feel like your relationship with them has in any way changed?
No, I think the relationship is still basically the same. I mean, it's been a couple years now, but the only thing that's definitely changed is just my parents. I mean, like I said, before they were just like fighting, and it's just like I'd come home, and just, all right, I'm going in my room, but now it's just they actually talk. So I'll come home, and my mom and dad will be in the living room just talking, and be like, hey, Eric, hey,
Does it make you? I have to ask you even. I always think, if they can do that, don't you? It seems like which is no comment on your parents, but you would think if they could be that cooperative now, why couldn't they? And maybe that's why people try to stay together, is they think there must be a way, but apparently not. Yeah. It sort of sounds like what Eric's saying affirms what you said, which is this is a case where, clearly he's much happier now that they've finally made a split that sounded like it was coming.
Yeah. I think Eric's situation's unusual in some ways. I think that there's a reasonable percentage, or a minority percentage, of people who get along better after divorce. I think most parents don't get along particularly well after divorce. And I think that for most people, the most that can be sort of strived for or expected is that they're polite and decent to each other. I think that it's particularly nice when parents are able to get along well. And I think what's most important for children is that the parents continue to have a good relationship with them. And I think that in a lot of cases, one parent or possibly both parents' relationship with the child improves after a divorce.
We only have about 30 seconds before we have to take our break, but I'm wondering if there was anything that maybe I should have pulled out of this, or that you want to comment on in terms of what Jessica and Eric have shared so far with us. And of course we'll have questions after the break, but If you have
I
any...
did want to say one thing. You were talking about how a parent might wish that the other parent was out of the picture, sort of, or something like that. I think that's a very common wish, that one parent would really like the other parent not to be around. But that's really not necessarily with the full knowledge of how that would negatively impact the child, because the children need both
It
parents.
sounds like they almost don't want to acknowledge that, because then they'd have to be nice, or at
Yeah.
least be civil to the other
Yeah.
parent and get them out of it.
Acknowledge the gifts of the other parent to the child, and that's hard, I think.
And you think, you know, if you can just remind them, you must have thought they had some, or you wouldn't probably have had kids with them to start with. All right, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we will have questions from the audience for all three of you, and you guys can ask each other some questions, too. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm a dad and a member of FREE, the Father's Rights and Equality Exchange. Most dads out there would love to spend more time with their kids and to be a real part of their lives. FREE wants to change the notion that most divorced dads are irresponsible, because most of us are dads who are responsible, and we're just looking for a chance to share in the parenting. If you want to learn more, please call us at 1-500-FOR-DADS or check our website at the address on your screen. And remember that fathers are parents too. Right?
Right.
Right.
Welcome back to Fathers Are Parents Too. We're here today with Dr. Clark and Jessica and Eric, and we have some questions for all three of them from the studio audience. Yes?
From what Jessica shared, it sounds like a child can experience what their parents' pain, but also any step-parent who comes into the picture. The question's really for any of you up there. What would you advise step-parents to do or not to do in a situation like this?
As far as I'm concerned, I think what I would definitely advise a step-parent to do, don't try to be your child's mother or father, because you're not. And they're just going to have, it's going to make them not like you, because they're going to think you're trying to take the mother or father's place. If you do have a problem with the ex-wife or the ex-husband, don't take it out on your children. If you really need to do anything about it, talk to your current spouse about it. I think those are two of the most important things you can do.
Dr. Clark, do you have anything to add to
Yeah,
that?
well, I definitely want to support what Jessica was saying. I think it's really important to not try to be the parent, and to be and express that, and to live that, and to my own experience and what I've heard from children in particular is that it's important to be clear that children understand, or sort of in their minds, what works best is when the biological parent is doing the telling them what to do part of the parenting. I mean, parenting's a lot more than telling people what to do, and you can be a parent as a step-parent without being the person that tells the child what to do all the time. You can provide the nurturance and the love, and that's an important role.
I think one of the things that I hear commonly from step-parents, a common concern or complaint, is that they feel that they need to somehow be listened to and get respect and have their home still respected as their home. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that may translate to their trying to act like a parent. And I'm wondering if you have any advice to both the biological parents and the step-parents as to what role a step-parent can take to still get that kind of respect as an adult in the house, and it's their own house, and this child is there maybe every other weekend or whatever, and how can they achieve that without overstepping that boundary?
Well, I think that I'm interested in, Eric or Jessica has a comment about this, but I think that most of the young people that I talk to tell me that respect isn't something that can be demanded, but respect is something that's earned. And so I think that it's important for parents to earn the respect and not demand, step-parents or parents for that matter, and not just stand on the respect, because that's actually not very respectable.
Right. Do you have anything you want to add to that, either of you?
I can just add that for most cases, including mine, respect towards the step-parent, especially if they've known them since a young age, will be there. But if the step-parent crosses any boundaries, especially with a step-parent, the respect can be lost really quick. And most step-parents will try to tighten up their rein on the children, which will cause them to lose even more respect.
Very good observation. I think we have another question. Yes.
Yes, one of the things that I've heard about children of divorce is that they either have a feeling that the divorce is their fault, or if I had done something differently, maybe mom and dad would still be together, or after the divorce they feel that there might be something that they could do to get mom and dad back together. Have either of you two experienced that, or could I get a comment from Dr. Clark?
Did you ever feel like if you had been different or done anything, your parents maybe wouldn't have fought so much, or?
Well, I didn't really feel it was like my fault at all. I mean, I know it wasn't my fault. As a matter of fact, I mean, it really was my mom and dad during the whole situation. But, and I never really thought that, is there something I could do to make them like come back together as like a mom and dad for me, because from what I see now, they're just a lot better off. So.
How about you?
After I got a little older and actually learned to realize what the divorce was, to be honest, I did express to, I can't remember if I expressed it to my mother, but to my dad and my stepmother, did I feel it was my fault? I didn't feel like it was my fault, honestly. I just wanted attention from him. So, it is for now. I wouldn't ever want to get them back together. I wouldn't want to see them back together.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Clark, I'm wondering, and actually during the break you mentioned that it almost seems like what we have here are some examples of some kids whose parents must have done something right. I mean, I'm sort of trying to get some stories from Eric, and it seems like his parents really did a great job, as much as one can, in that situation. And I'm wondering if you can even comment on that, and if you've heard maybe some things that these two people have said about things that worked.
Yeah. Well, one thing, it seems like to me that, you know, just the fact that they don't feel any blame, I think there's probably two factors. One is that their parents probably were clear with them that it wasn't them. And sometimes parents read or think about that that's important to tell your children, and think it's you tell them once, and that's sort of, then they know. But that's not true, especially when you're talking younger children. And I think that another factor is probably age. I mean, I think that the kids that are most susceptible to feeling, you know, that it's something to do with them are much younger, especially 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, when their world's a bit, you know, sort of, they tend to think that if anybody's upset, it must be at them and they must have done something wrong. And so I think it's really important for parents to know that, you know, especially young children are sort of, have their antennas up for self-blame and need to minimize conflict around the children and be clear that the conflict, not just tell kids that the conflict is because it's not about them, but a little more detail than that. What is it then? So there's really something that the kid can hang their...
So the kid can point and say, this is why.
There is something else. It's because my parents couldn't agree about money. It wasn't me.
Okay, we have another question. Hi.
Yes, hello. It doesn't really sound like this conflict was present with our folks here today, but you know, during the time of divorce, things get pretty tense and pretty hectic. Is there some advice to the parents that would, from the kids' perspective, as to how to keep them a little cooler to make that separation less volatile?
So what would you suggest to parents who are going through it to do, or to not do, perhaps, that makes it easier on...
I would have to say to explain more why. Why are you doing this right now? You know, why are you gonna, like, you know, just break up? And just that, to me, if I got a little bit more explanation, then maybe I would have got more involved. But at that actual time, I just kind of stayed out of it because I thought it was for the best.
So you would like to have heard, or you think it's important for the kids involved to hear?
Oh, definitely.
For it to make
why.
sense to them, it sounds like.
Just why, you know, exactly why are you going to sign these papers, you know?
Why are you tearing our family apart?
Exactly.
Any advice?
I think the thing I'm most adamant on is absolutely do not, under any circumstances, bring the other parent down in front of the children, because especially younger children, they're impressionable. They will listen to what you say. And again, it does make them feel that you're also bringing them down. I think a lot of people try to get the child on their side, so to speak, when there is a divorce. And that's just the absolute worst thing you can do. That's just asking to have problems later on in your child's life.
Is that something that you experienced at all? I'm just wondering what that was like for you to be in that, if you did.
I do have some resentment towards my father and my stepmother for the things they said about my mother. So if anything, it's going to do more harm than good, because when your child gets older, they're going to resent you. They're not going to resent the other parent.
I think that's actually a very important point, I think, and I've had other people bring that up to me, which is that, you know, try as you might to maybe alienate a child's affections from the other parent, even if you're not thinking of it that way. And it may even work for the short term, but eventually those kids are going to become adults and look back and see what really was going on, and it will hurt your relationship with them. Is that your experience?
I think those are excellent points, and some of the most essential points, I think, for parents to know, that when they talk to their children about divorce, that they need to know something about why. That's what Eric was talking about. Something about why. I mean, why is this? It's not just because we don't love each other anymore, because that's a scary thing for young children, because then maybe their parents' love could go away for them. You know, but some reason, and they don't have to go into all their personal details, but and then also, you know, I just think it's important for parents to really, and it's very difficult to step outside their own, in the conflict of it, which was the question that we were asked, to step outside that and think about their children, but I think it's the most important thing.
Right. We have time just for one more very quick question.
Yeah, after the divorce has occurred, and especially with small children, a lot of times they'll perpetuate this reunion fantasy, and that can go on for a long time, where it could be very difficult, especially for the parent who was the leaving parent, to have to deal with that. What's the best way to manage that with the child that, you know, wants you to get back with the other parent and you know, reunite when you know you can't?
And you get 30 seconds for that.
Do you want me to say something about that? Okay. I think that almost all children, again, especially young children, have some hope, some wish, some very powerful wish often, and that their world's going to be better if their parents could get back together. And I think many children sort of wish that there's something they could do or want to try to make, you know, do something about that. I think it's a sad thing, because I think that one thing that's really important is that kids get a clear message that it's not going to happen.
Right. We have about 5 seconds. I'm going to ask each of you in 5 seconds to say, if you could say one thing to the parents out there to keep in mind when they're getting divorced with respect to their kids, what would it be? Eric?
It would probably be, just because you stop loving your husband or wife, don't stop loving your kids.
Jessica?
I'd have to say the most important thing would be to keep your children out of it as much as possible.
Dr. Clark?
I don't think I can beat that.
They've
That sounds
just said
pretty good.
Well, thank you all so much for being here and sharing your stories with us, and thank you for being here. And you join us next week on Fathers Are Parents Too. God.